There are times in history when silence is no longer a choice. When nations wear masks of friendship but whisper daggers behind closed doors. When the strong must rise not with wrath but with reason, and the wounded must speak not with fear but with fire. So let us rise today not to accuse but to awaken. In the realm of international relations, truth is rarely clothed in honesty. It is instead draped in interest, strategy, and survival. When we look at America's open gestures of support toward Pakistan in contrast with its diplomatic caution toward India, we must understand that such alliances are not shaped in the glow of shared ideals, but in the cold, calculated halls of power. America does not hold Pakistan's hand because it sees in it a friend. It does so because it sees in it a tool, one that can be used, shaped, and even sacrificed when needed. This support is transactional, not spiritual. It is not about shared values, but shared vulnerabilities and opportunities. Pakistan, with its endless dependence on foreign aid and its strategic geography near Afghanistan, China, and India, becomes useful real estate, and in geopolitics, usefulness can often overshadow righteousness. India, on the other hand, has refused to be anybody's pawn. From the moment of her birth in the fires of freedom, she walked tall. She did not beg for favor. She earned her respect. She built her nuclear shield not in secrecy, but in sovereignty. She aligned with no bloc in the Cold War, and continued to carve her own way in a world that wanted her either silent or servile. But India would not kneel, and that pride, that independence, that refusal to bow, these unsettle those who are accustomed to submission. America often finds comfort in regimes it can influence, in leaders it can counsel, in economies it can sanction and steer. Pakistan fits that mold. India, too proud and too capable, does not. And so when America watches India deal in rupees with the East, collaborate with Russia on defense, push back against Western narratives on global platforms, it begins to whisper doubts and extend overtures elsewhere. It's not love for Pakistan that drives this shift. It is discomfort with India's unapologetic assent. Pakistan does not offer America a better partnership. It offers America a controllable one. And when India's economy grows while rejecting Western pressure, when her space agency lands on the moon with a fraction of NASA's budget, when her prime minister speaks without the need for approval from Washington, those in power begin to worry about influence, not friendship. The world order has been shaped by centuries of Western dominance. But now, as multipolarity rises and new voices demand to be heard, the old powers are adjusting, often uncomfortably. Supporting Pakistan against India is not about right and wrong. It's about recalibrating influence. It's about ensuring that India never feels fully confident to lead, without looking over her shoulder. It's about reminding a growing nation that despite her rise, the game is still being played on someone else's board. But this is where America misjudges the Indians. For India has never needed validation to thrive. She has survived colonization, partition, invasions, and famine, not because someone saved her, but because she never gave up on herself. The mistake made by global powers is believing that nations like India need praise to progress. But the Indian spirit was not built in conference rooms, it was built in fields and fire and sacrifice and silence, in poetry and protest. America may lean toward Pakistan for its own reasons, but India must not view this as rejection. It must see it as confirmation. Confirmation that it has grown too bold, too independent, too strategic to be conveniently embraced. And so this support of Pakistan becomes not an insult but a reflection of India's refusal to be managed. Pakistan stands not as a beacon of stability, but as a tool of convenience for global powers that benefit more from disorder than from peace. Its economic struggles, its internal political chaos, and its dependency on foreign aid make it ripe for manipulation. It is not empowered by its own will but enabled by others' agendas. This is not partnership, it is exploitation cloaked in diplomacy. America's support for Pakistan, rather than being an endorsement of strength, is a calculated move to keep a pot simmering next to India. A controlled fire near a rising superpower is often more useful to the West than complete calm. Chaos, after all, breeds arms sales, fosters dependency, and justifies interference. Pakistan, with its fragile institutions and easily influenced leadership, becomes a lever to apply pressure, to test reactions, and to create diversions when India's global rise becomes too confident, too swift. This is the quiet game of deterrence. When you cannot block a power like India head-on, you surround it with problems. You don't fight the lion, you distract it with hyenas. The West, and America in particular, understands the delicate balance of South Asia. Supporting Pakistan allows them to keep India from achieving a seamless ascent. Whether it's cross-border tension, intelligence disruption, or political antagonism, Pakistan plays its part, consciously or not, in keeping India on alert. This tactic isn't new. Colonial powers have always leaned into the policy of division to maintain control. And in today's geopolitical theater, the principle remains the same. Stir enough trouble around a rising nation, so it expends energy, managing threats instead of chasing vision. This pattern is not lost on those who see clearly. Pakistan is not propped up because it brings peace, it is propped up because it perpetuates conflict. And America's open-handed gestures toward Islamabad, be it military aid or public statements, signal not brotherhood but a sustained investment in imbalance. Pakistan has become the ground where Western powers play out their regional games without having to place boots on the ground. They support just enough to keep the flame alive, but not enough to let Pakistan stand tall. It is a relationship of dependency disguised as alliance, and it is maintained so that India must always look sideways before it moves forward. India, meanwhile, has managed its rise with internal resilience. It has not waged wars to climb. It has built, innovated, and negotiated. Its trajectory threatens the status quo not because it is aggressive, but because it is self-sufficient. A powerful, stable, democratic India that does not need Western validation is a shift in the global equation. So to contain that momentum, a dysfunctional neighbor is kept just strong enough to create tension, but weak enough to remain dependent. This strategic balancing act benefits only those who fear a world where the East speaks with equal authority. But even as this pattern continues, what the West often fails to grasp is that such tactics can only slow, not stop, a people who are determined. The Indian spirit has faced far greater threats in its long history: imperialists, invaders, natural calamities, and yet it has always risen again. A supported Pakistan may cause India to bleed at its borders, but it will never shake its foundations. If anything, it strengthens India's resolve to be vigilant, strategic, and internally united. It teaches India not to rely on external affection, but to trust its own path. America's support for Pakistan is not a mark of Pakistani strength. It is an indicator of Indian inevitability, for when you try to slow. In the eyes of global power structures, India represents something deeply unsettling: a sovereign voice that cannot be muted, a rising force that cannot be controlled, and a civilization that defies the template of dependence the West has grown accustomed to reinforcing. India is not a nation built on borrowed strength. It is the product of relentless self-belief, enduring heritage, and unapologetic resilience. Its economic growth has not been dictated by Western mandates. It has been fueled by innovation, grassroots entrepreneurship, and a democratic process that, while flawed, remains fundamentally indigenous. This makes India both a challenge and a disruption to a global order that favors obedience over originality. When America sees India choosing to trade in rupees instead of dollars, forging defense pacts with Russia while maintaining strategic ties with the US, this friction serves multiple Western interests. It gives justification for weapons deals, for military presence in the region, for diplomatic mediation that ensures continued relevance. As long as there is a conflict point near India, global powers can act as brokers, influencers, and benefactors. This alternative is what the world is watching closely. And it is precisely why America's support for Pakistan is not simply a foreign policy choice. It is a reaction, a reaction to a nation that cannot be cornered, bribed, or broken. India does not fit the mold, and so the mold is pushed against her. But what global powers have yet to fully realize is that India's journey is not about recognition. It is about transformation, and no amount of external balancing can suppress a nation whose internal compass is aligned with destiny. In geopolitics, nothing is ever accidental. Every alliance, every handshake, every carefully worded press release is laced with long-term intent. When America extends visible support to Pakistan, despite its internal turmoil and track record of enabling instability, it sends a signal not only to India but to the world about the power games that still define international diplomacy. It shows that the scales are rarely tipped by merit or morality, but by manipulation and interest. Pakistan, despite its economic chaos and political fragility, remains a strategic pressure point for America. Its location, its proximity to China, its ability to stir regional tensions, all make it a useful piece on the chessboard. It is not America's favorite partner, it is its convenient disruptor. India, on the other hand, is not convenient. It is powerful, opinionated, and independent. It demands respect, not instruction. It does not conform to predefined roles. And this, more than anything, makes it a target not in open confrontation, but through covert resistance. America has never openly opposed India's rise, but its subtle moves, the approval of military aid to Pakistan, silence during cross-border escalations, the diplomatic balancing act at global forums, betray a quiet discomfort. This is not just about South Asia, it is about the emergence of a new center of influence that doesn't seek validation from the West. The West, and particularly America, has long positioned itself as the world's moral compass and political stabilizer. But that narrative weakens when a country like India rises without its help, without its financial aid, without pledging loyalty to its worldview. It becomes difficult to maintain the image of indispensable leadership when others succeed through their own systems, their own people, their own culture. India's growing voice at the UN, in BRICS and G20, and through South-South cooperation, is not just expansion, it is reclamation. Reclaiming a seat that had long been denied, reclaiming the dignity that colonialism once stole, and reclaiming the right to define progress on its own terms. America therefore leans on old tools like Pakistan, not necessarily because they work, but because they delay. A conflict-ridden subcontinent keeps India busy. It slows decision-making, it demands defense budgets, it fosters internal political divisions, and in this distraction, the momentum of leadership can be disrupted. That is the hope. But what such strategy fails to account for is India's memory, a memory long and painful, filled with betrayal and survival. India has never been afforded the luxury of naivety. She knows the difference between smiles and schemes. She remembers every time she stood alone during wars, during sanctions, during invasions. And from that memory she has built a foreign policy of realism and restraint. This is why attempts to isolate or control India using Pakistan will always fall short. India does not measure her strength by international headlines, but by domestic progress. She is not distracted by temporary alliances formed out of geopolitical convenience. She is focused on growth, on innovation, on representing a billion dreams that no external force can suppress. Pakistan can be armed, funded, praised, and defended, but it will not stop India's rise. If anything, it reveals the true nature of those who claim to support peace while investing in instability. India must not be disheartened by the visible gestures of support extended to her rival. Instead, she must recognize them as acknowledgments of her power. The lion is always challenged more than the sheep, and when you are walking toward greatness, resistance is not a sign of failure. It is confirmation that you are on the right path. So let Pakistan be held up by those who fear a balanced world. Let the games be played. For every time India is tested, she grows sharper, wiser, and more resolute. And there is no strategy in the world powerful enough to outlast the will of a nation that knows who it is, where it came from, and exactly where it's going. This moment in time must not be misunderstood as a plea for fairness or a cry for acknowledgement. It must be recognized for what it truly is, a test of clarity, vision, and self-worth. India stands today not on the threshold of survival, but at the edge of transformation. And in this crucial phase, America's open tilt toward Pakistan should not be taken as a judgment on India's value, but as a reflection of the shifting tectonics of global power. It is tempting to interpret diplomatic slights as personal insults, to react emotionally to perceived betrayals, but India's strength lies not in reaction, it lies in direction. A nation that has survived centuries of foreign rule, internal trauma, and socio-economic challenges, does not pause for applause, nor weep over whispers in Western halls. It marches forward with purpose forged in fire. Let this moment not breed bitterness but sharpen resolve. The lion does not fear the dance of jackals, nor does it waste its roar on echoes. India must look beyond superficial alliances and see the larger picture. The world is in flux. The old order is loosening its grip, and new centers of power are forming. America's serve for Pakistan is not a validation of Pakistan's strength, but an attempt to maintain relevance in a region where influence is slipping. India does not need to compete for approval. It needs only to stay rooted in its mission: development, stability, and global leadership with conscience. It must remember that the truest form of strength is not loud. It is quiet, consistent, and unshakable. When the eagle lends its feather to the sparrow, it is not because the sparrow has earned the sky. It is because the eagle fears the lion on the ground, the one who does not fly but rules. The question is not whether America supports Pakistan. The question is, does it matter? What will India do with that knowledge? Will it be disheartened or determined? Will it seek validation or build vision? This is a time to stand taller, to speak louder, not with words but with actions that rewrite the language of power. Let roads be built where only conflict was expected. Let satellites rise where sanctions once fell. Let medicine, education, and innovation silence the noise of warmongers and doubters. India's strength has never come from the outside. Not from trade deals, not from foreign aid, not from global headlines. It has always come from within, from its villages, its scholars, its soldiers, its mothers, its poets, and its youth. No external alliance, no matter how glittering, can rival the force of a united people who know their worth. Let America choose Pakistan. Let it sell weapons, issue statements, and play its strategic games. India must stay focused on building a future where such games are irrelevant. A future in which partnerships are based not on manipulation but mutual respect. A future where India is not merely reacting to the world but reshaping it. This moment, with all its complications and political shadows, must be used not to mourn but to motivate. For every gesture of support given to Pakistan, let India offer 10 gestures of self-belief to her own people. For every press conference that ignores India's voice, let India speak through progress, integrity, and wisdom. A nation that has crossed oceans of adversity does not stumble over shallow streams. Let those who underestimate her keep watching. Let those who attempt to slow her down keep trying. For the soul of India is not made of paper treaties. It is forged in steel, soaked in centuries of resilience, and guided by a compass that always points forward.